Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is games leaving my collection for November. And for the first time in a long time, I actually have a lot of games to get rid of. Partially because I got through a whole bunch of reviews, so those can now slowly leave, but either way, let's go ahead and dive into it. Usual disclaimers that I play a lot of games, which means I go through a lot of games, which means I get rid of a lot of games, and many of those games are great games. Just because I'm getting rid of a game does not mean it's a bad game. Very often they're games I wish I could keep, but can't keep everything. And then sometimes there are games that I'm fine getting rid of because they might be great for somebody else, but they weren't great for me. Good versus bad doesn't do it. I want great in my collection, at least great for me. And so, yeah, either way, I guess the point is I'm getting rid of games, but don't read too much into it past the fact that I just have to choose what stays and goes in my collection. Either way, let's start this off. And there are a bunch of easy ones. There are some cheats. There's ones I have reviews for, so if you've watched my content, you may already know some of these. But starting off the bat, I'm going to go with a cheat first, which is Machina Arcana is leaving my collection. No, not because I haven't played it in a long time, but rather because I got the newest version of the game, the 3rd edition or 2nd and a half edition, all of that. So I have that. It's actually on the shelf behind me over here-ish, something right there. Kind of, you can half see it. It's like directly behind me. But that means that Machina Arcana 2nd edition is unfortunately going away. Or not really unfortunately, I don't see a reason why I would keep it, because I don't need another copy of the exact same game. Machina Arcana is amazing. I have an unboxing of the newest edition if you want to see that. It's not that exciting, it's just me talking about stuff as usual. But that is the first game, the easy cheat on the list. From there, let's go through a bunch of games I reviewed. And there are a bunch of games I reviewed this past month. I don't even know, there's a lot of games that I've reviewed, and many of them aren't staying. They range from good to great, some that were just not good either, but those are the minority. But either way, let's go ahead and start them off the bat. Starting with a bunch of smaller box games. Starting with Lost Cities Roll and Write. I talked about this in a video I did, five games that are roundup or something. I can't remember what I called it. It was a 5-game roundup, and I'm wondering now, I think there were other games I may have left out of this video that aren't here. I don't know. Either way, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, 5 Lost Cities Roll and Write. Basically, I think I'm trying to remember what I included in last month's video, and whether I've left some out because I thought they were included in last month's video. Like things like K3. K3 is leaving the collection, but I don't remember if I put it in a roundup or not. Either way, let's go into it. Lost Cities Roll and Write. Lost Cities Roll and Write is not for me, unfortunately. I thought the game was fine, but I can't see a reason to play this over plain Lost Cities, the card game. Both are small box form, both play whatever. Someone did point out, I was telling someone this, and someone pointed out, well, this you can play with more than 2 players. That's fair. That's a good reason. I'm not going to keep it for that reason, but that is the only reason I can think of why you would choose this. It's not that it's bad, it's that Lost Cities, the card game, is better, and they're both already small, short form entertainment, and they do a good job, but just the Lost Cities, the card game, I'd recommend first. Next up, we have a bunch more of these roll and writes. We have Dice Trip, which, this is the one that I really did want to keep, but I'm wrestling with, too many roll and writes as it is, and it feels too similar to On Tour, and On Tour feels like a smoother experience to me. But this was very good. I really do recommend this one. Solid game. I marginally chose On Tour. Like, I went back and forth with which one I preferred. I think they give a very similar experience. I think this mimics On Tour, so On Tour gets bonus points for doing it first, at least to me, but bonus points don't count for anything as far as me keeping a game. Ultimately, while this offers a bit more strategy, in my opinion, I like the simplicity and cleanness of On Tour, which usually is not the way I'd go. Usually I'd pick the more complicated one. This is one of those exception times. Then from there we have Escape Roll and Write, and Alhambra Roll and Write, and Copenhagen Roll and Write. And for those, there are different reasons. None of them I'm keeping, but I did enjoy Copenhagen and Alhambra, just not enough to keep them. Escape Roll and Write, I didn't enjoy at all. This one I did not find fun. It took all the magic of Escape, the fun real-time dice rolling, and converted it to a fairly dry roll and write that I did not find remotely entertaining. Remotely is being harsh, but in the genre, it's always that weird balance. Like, I'd probably give it a 2.5 on my scale. It's not the worst game. It's not a bad game. I can't think of a reason, 2.5 out of 5, not out of 10. But I can't think of a reason to keep this one at all. So I'm being a little harsher here than I would if I toned down my language. It's not that bad. It's just not, in the sphere of roll and writes, there's so many better roll and writes. Then we have Copenhagen and Alhambra, both of which I enjoyed, but not enough to keep them. They both did a solid job, simple, accessible, but again, roll and writes are a genre that is overpopulated with tons of games, both simple and accessible, and nuanced and complicated, and I don't think any of these shun enough to keep them. Again, Dice Trip being the closest from those. From there, let's dive into more reviews. I have some small boxes, some big boxes, but again, I'm getting rid of all the easy stuff first. Let me take a pause and a sip here. I don't usually bring my coffees into my games leaving the collection videos. They're usually saved for unboxings and the like. But Why not? Anyways, Waste Nights is next on this list. Waste Nights is another game that I debated keeping. I held on to this for a bit, trying to decide how many more games to play, how much more to dive into it. The question was whether to go through all the snares before getting rid of it or not. And when I got to the point where I realized that I was leaning towards forcing myself to do it, that's when I didn't do it. You see, one thing I've actually a video I did recently is what was it called again? 10 games I'm playing or else or something like that. But basically, it was a video of games that I have to play them or they are leaving my collection. And I got a few comments on that talking about, oh, you know, if you're forcing yourself to play a game, you probably shouldn't be playing the game. And I hear the reason or the statement. I completely understand where it's coming from. And that applies to something like this. It doesn't apply to all games. But it's one of those weird balances where if I mentally realize I'm forcing myself to play a game, that's when I want to get rid of it. Versus if I'm playing mind games because I really do want to play the game, but I just haven't executed on it yet, it's a fine line. It is a fine line. It's the equivalent of being tired at the end of the day and just still managing to lean into and dive into the game you're playing. But yeah, Waste Nights is good, it's solid, but I enjoy it, not enough to keep it. And for context, I didn't talk much about the game. I've been kind of rushing through these without talking too much about the game. Waste Nights is partially because I reviewed them, so I feel I've already talked about them, even though you, whoever you are, may not have actually seen my videos about them, so you don't know anything about it. Waste Nights is a narrative exploration, post-apocalyptic wasteland game. You're basically running around trying to accomplish a bit of a thing. They actually, fun fact, so they are actually putting out an app for the game to make the storybook aspect easier to dive into. One of my critiques was that lots of storybook flipping that kind of took away from the immersion. As like a few mechanics and then storybook flipping. Not necessarily a bad thing in of itself, but a little bit of a nitpick. And they were actually putting out an app which should make that easier. Overall, I like the game, solid, but I like games like Destiny's more, and so Destiny's is the one that's staying, versus Waste Nights is going away. Even though they're not directly comparable, because there's differences, one's co-op, one's not, either way. So, next up we have Khora. Khora from Yellow Games. This is one that is it's a abstracted Civ tableau building game. It very much does have the lighter feeling of Terraforming Mars. Like if you abstract it down to a few core tracks, a few game elements, and then try to go up these various tracks as you go, and every round you get progressively stronger because you're generating more, and you do more, and you get more done, and you conquer various regions, and you discover things, and you play cards. The cards are easily my favorite part of the game. The cards are a lot of fun to play and dive and interweave and get that card and then draw 2 more cards and find a combo that works for you. I had enough critiques of it though that it's one that I'm not keeping. But again, like Waste Nights, it's one that I debated keeping. I mean, again, that's a weird balance. Like, Dice Trip, here we go. Exclude Machina Arcana because Machina Arcana I'm replacing. These 4, I had no debate about keeping. These 3, I debated keeping, but am not because of the pursuit of the best games always. And then next up, another game I reviewed. This one I didn't debate keeping, and I'll explain why in a second, which is Ruination. Ruination, which is from Colossal Games and Travis Chance. And this is one that is good. The reason I didn't debate keeping this one is because it's area control, and it's area control, which is a genre that I love, and I have so many games that I rank a 4.5 or a 5 within the genre of area control. So Ruination, despite the fact that I did like it, I didn't like it enough to even debate keeping it within the genre of area control. Versus Khora and Waste Nights, those are not as hotly contested genres in my collection. To me, area controls are the best games in my collection, which also means I have the highest standard around whether I keep them or not, because you need to be comparable to Blood Rage. You need to be comparable to Lords of Hellas, to Cyclades, to Kemet, to Inish, to Chaos in the Old World. You need to be comparable to Rurik. Every single one of those games is a fantastic, amazing experience. And if you're not holding in that sphere as a game, I'm just not going to keep you. Also, Waste Nights probably got more bonus points as being keepable because I could solo it. Some true solo, some two-handed solo, versus a game like Ruination. I mean, there might actually be a solo mode, but it's not the kind of game I'm going to solo, which means it's fighting against more competitive game time restrictions. Next up we have another game I reviewed, and then we're done with the reviews and we move on to things I have not reviewed, which is Steam Watchers. Steam Watchers is another area control game, this time from Mythic Games, and everything I said about Ruination, see the same issues here. For context, my issue with Ruination's a tricky one, because even in my review, I had a hard time defining what it is about Ruination that doesn't resonate with me as much. On the surface, I should love it. There's lots of powers, lots of abilities, lots of combat, lots of stuff. There were some small feelings that didn't really resonate with me, and it's a harder definition. I feel like it's more of a conversation than a video, like of really trying to fine-tune and define what it is that didn't work for me. Steam Watches, I don't have that problem. Steam Watches I can be more specific about, but going back to Ruination for a second, it's almost more intangible about the types of powers and abilities, the types of combat. I never got the feeling of excitement of, wow, what kind of things that I combine. The powers and abilities, there's a lot of them, but they all tend to be fairly weaker in scope. Not like, there's no game-breaking moments. There's nothing about Ruination ever gave me a game-breaking, powerful moment. But the recipe feels like it should work, and it just happened to not produce a cake I particularly loved. I liked it, just didn't love it. But that's, again, it's a horrible way to review games. I debated not reviewing it because I couldn't really pinpoint exactly why it didn't work for me. I have small little edges of, well, maybe the cake was underbaked, and maybe the humidity was off, and maybe this and maybe that, but it's not a firm line in the sand. Steam Watches is much easier for me to go into. Steam Watches, which is probably upside down, because that's, yeah, it sounds about right, it's upside down. Steam Watches from Mythic Games is one that I'm going to put these other games on top of, because otherwise I'm going to be running out of space here very quickly. Steam Watches is one that the core strategy of the game, very solid. No complaints. That's not true. One complaint. The primary complaint is the fact that Steam Watches is a game where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It is a game where if you are not doing well, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer big time. And so it's one that I like the strategy, but there is one core complaint against it, which is that thing I just said. And then additionally, and more importantly for me, is the fact that it doesn't have anything special in the way of ongoing development powers and abilities. You get your starting faction, you have a faction that has its own special powers, which is great. It gives me a reason to dive back into trying new strategies. I like all that. But it doesn't have any developed powers and abilities. Every game I just mentioned above, a few minutes ago, Rurik might not. Rurik might not. Interesting. Let's come back to Rurik. Blood Rage, Kemet, Cyclades, Inish, Chaos in the Old World, those are all games that have tons of powers and abilities constantly changing up the game state that mix things up, and I like that. It adds more chaos and takes away a bit of the refined strategy, but that's what I like, that's what I prefer. Plus, any game with drafting, I love. Rurik, interestingly enough, doesn't really have a lot in the way of powers and abilities. It is more dry in the pure implementation of the game. Where I do love Rurik is nothing to do with area control. I love Rurik because of the programming mechanism of the game, which is so ridiculously tight. That Rurik is a game that I would argue I do not love it because of the area control. The area control is fine. I love it because of the programming mechanism at play. A similar programming mechanism to what we've seen from Lancaster. Rurik almost feels like if you combined Inish and Lancaster in a single game. And I'm also starting to see that same programming or thought process aspect in Resurgence from the designer Stan Kodensky, which Resurgence is currently on Kickstarter. So yeah, Rurik is an interesting exception there, now that I think about it. But still one that I love. Anyways, next up. We now can move out of reviews. Let's start with the smallest box here. Sequoia from Board Game Tables. Sequoia is part of a trilogy of Sequoia, GPS, and Mountain Goats. GPS and Mountain Goats are still in our collection. Sequoia does not get played. Sequoia, to me, I think I primarily kept Sequoia because if you watch my original review I did with Ricky on these three games, I enjoyed all of them, but Sequoia to me is the least enjoyable of them. Not bad, probably a 3. But it's one that, 3 out of 5, but it's one that, these games are all out of shot. What's going on here? Let's put these in shot. There we go. Sequoia is one that, Mountain Goats has a charm to it. GPS has a charm to it. Sequoia feels like I'd just rather be playing Las Vegas. Las Vegas is another game, but has a similar feeling, but just, I can't see a reason to pick Sequoia over Las Vegas. I think I kept Sequoia for a long time because of the need to have a set. And I actually plan on picking up Dandelion, I believe, as their newest one from the newest Kickstarter. So I'll be taking one out of the set and adding one to the set. I don't know if it'll stay or not. We'll see. But yeah, I try to be resistant to keeping things just because they're part of a set. With a box this small, I think I let myself do it, but I shouldn't have. That's not how things should work. Although now that I think about it, I have to remember to take the expansion out of the other box and put it into this box, because when I sell or trade it, may as well get the expansion out of it. Anyways, that's Sequoia. I like it. And I didn't talk about the game. I'm doing a terrible job today. Sequoia is one where you basically have these tree cards, and you're rolling dice and putting down your own tokens on these trees and trying to have the highest stack and trying to go back and forth, ensuring you have the highest stack and there's no one else tied with you, and it's fine. It's just, I'd rather play Las Vegas, which does the same thing, just much more fun, much better, much more interesting to me, although I will say I do like the art and box size and all of that of Sequoia. From there, let's move to something that's not really a game, but let's talk about it all the same. I'm getting rid of something from CMON. More specifically, I'm getting rid of the CMON Comics collection, okay? So these are the 4 comic books. I say 4, there's technically 5. They had Starcada Quest as well. I did not get that one. When I got this set, I own Cthulhu Death May Die, I own Zombicide, I own Zombicide Invader, I had Zombicide 2nd Edition coming, and I still owned Rising Sun. So I got these 4. I did not have Starcada Quest, so I didn't get that. Which means I also have all the promos for these, but then I got rid of Rising Sun after getting these comics, but I don't actually know the timeline. I may have gotten rid of it before. I can't remember if I got the comics first or got rid of Rising Sun first, but after I pledged for the comics for sure. I've gotten rid of Zombicide 2nd Edition. Zombicide 2nd Edition I didn't even have at the time. I've since gotten rid of Zombicide 2nd Edition. Then we have Zombicide Invader, which I have not gotten rid of, but I might get rid of. We'll see. I don't know yet. We're still checking. This whole Zombicide Marvel thing, Marvel Zombies thing, makes it harder for me to justify keeping another Zombicide. And then we have Cthulhu Death May Die, which is going nowhere over my dead body. So that's the games. As far as the comics, I've read all of these. In terms of my preference, let's rank them lowest to best. They're actually all pretty good. Rising Sun, no, that's interesting. That's interesting. I have a hard time ranking these. I'm going to say Zombicide 2nd Edition is my least favorite from these. I enjoyed all these comics, for context. I thought they were all fun to read. I'll be getting rid of all of them, but I enjoyed them all. I'm not going to keep a comic thing. I already have enough of a problem with the amount of board games I keep. I don't need another addiction in terms of comics and all this stuff. So Zombicide 2nd Edition is going away. I enjoyed the story, thought it was well done, well illustrated, lots of fun. Probably Rising Sun next, as far as, it was a shorter one. This is shorter in terms of thickness if you're comparing them, but it was still a fun little story. I might put, you know what, no, I'm switching my order. I'm putting Rising Sun as my least favorite, then Zombicide 2nd Edition, then Zombicide Invader. Really like this one, a little bit of a twist to what's going on in the beginning. I won't spoil it for you, but really enjoyed it. And then lastly, my favorite is Cthulhu Death May Die, partially because the board game pulled me into the world. Arguably, if it wasn't for Cthulhu Death May Die, the board game, I could argue that Cthulhu Death May Die, the comic, would be my least favorite. But in fact, it's my favorite now, because I like the IP and the board game and all those things, and so... And plus, they came with extras for my board game, so I like the extras, because now I have more cultists, I have more heroes, more things like that. Next up, we have another cheat. And you're like, cheat? I thought you got rid of the cheats. Sort of. We have 3 more games I'm getting rid of. This one is a cheat. This one is My City. Why am I getting rid of My City? Well, if I'm cheating, it's because I finished My City. My City is a polyomino game for Reina Knizia. It is basically a polyomino legacy game. So if you've played games like Baron Park or any polyomino game, it has that general concept. But then it adds legacy to it. It's from Cosmos, by the way. And it adds legacy to it in the sense that every single set of 3 games introduces new rules. Technically, even sometimes every game. But you open an envelope, it's 24 games total, and then you could keep going. So I've played 25 because I played 1 Legacy. I played 1 Eternal Mode game. And then basically you have a set of 3 games, and you can read the rules one at a time as you add to it. And then you open up another envelope, you get a few new rules, constantly iterating upon what's going on, the ways you go through it. Ultimately, the entire experience still boils down to a fairly light Legacy game, but one that it changes constantly enough that I enjoyed it. Would I play through it again? I can't imagine doing so. It's possible. Maybe if my daughter wanted to. I don't know. I can't imagine I'd play through it again. I don't think I found it rewarding enough to play through it again, but I certainly found it rewarding enough to give it 25 plays, which is a decent amount of playtime and games for, what was it, $25? Like, you can get this game on sale fairly frequently, fairly often. So yeah, I enjoyed My City. I can recommend it. I will say, if you play it to 2 players, fun little trick, you can actually play the whole thing twice, because you can use the other players. You only ever affect your own components, so you can use the other players' components in terms of being able to re-dive into it as a 2-player experience twice for the same price. Although I literally just told you that I probably wouldn't, but that's me. You might like it more. I thought it was light, but I like Polyomino and I like Legacy, and the 2 combined gave me an experience that was worthwhile, but I don't think I'm playing it again. Although they did announce Lost Cities not Lost Cities, they did announce My City Roll and Write coming. My City Polyomino Roll and Write. I can't remember exactly what it is. They're basically doing a Roll and Write Legacy Polyomino game with this, and so maybe I'll dive into that. That I can see myself doing. Next up, we have Twisted Fables. Twisted Fables, which is one that... This is actually the original prototype that I had, and I don't usually cover prototypes I'm getting rid of. In terms of games leaving the collection, I don't really cover prototypes. I'm a little nervous it's going to fall in the coffee, so I'm going to move this back a notch. Basically, the reason I don't cover prototypes leaving my collection is because for many of them, I don't consider them to have ever really entered my collection. For many of them. If I back it, then, and I get a final copy, then yes, it will, I will talk about whether it entered or stayed or all that. This is one where the prototype was well enough designed, or, you know, felt enough like a final copy of the game, that I kept the prototype, played the prototype, enjoyed my games of it, but I also haven't played it in probably like 8 months, and I'm realizing I don't really have a huge desire to pull it out and play. I like the game. There are aspects of it I want to see done differently. They're actually currently running a GameFound, I say currently, but it might be over by now, I don't know. They're currently running a GameFound campaign for the leftover stock that you can get in time for Christmas, all of that. So if you're interested in this, if you want the deluxe copies of the game, which look amazing, the art looks amazing, the game is solid. This is one that I would keep if I had more time, energy, and patience. This falls into the what do we call it? The Waste Knights and Khora category of things I'd love to keep, but I have to make hard choices, and I just haven't played it in a long time and haven't felt the desire to play it in a long time. But it is a good game, solid little two-player head-to-head game, and the cards and powers are fun. I wanted a little more from the deck building and the way it plays out, but overall I did enjoy it. So let's Twisted Fables, which is leaving my collection after finally like a year or so. Maybe more than that. It's been a long time since I covered it. Then lastly, sorry, there's actually enough games that I had to put these on the floor this time, which is nice. It's been so long since I got rid of a lot of games. Lastly, we have Wasteland Express Delivery Service. This is from Pandasaurus Games, and it doesn't feel like a typical Pandasaurus Games game. This has game trays, which are amazing, by the way, and this is a post-apocalyptic game. Have not reviewed this one on the channel, but really, I very much enjoyed Wasteland Express Delivery Service. I know I'm getting rid of it, but I'm getting rid of it because it really just made me want to get Xia Legends of a Drift System back. That's what this game did for me. It's a pick up and deliver game set in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. As a starting basis, I don't care for post-apocalyptic as a theme. I've never have. I mean, it's fine, although I will say the art is nice. This is very colorful and poppy. It doesn't scream doom and gloom. It screams colorful and poppy. The game itself, though, falls into the patterns of, there's a lot of good things going on. I do enjoy it. I do. It was a solid game. But ultimately, it comes down to standard pick up and deliver mechanics. Standard, you upgrade your vehicle, you upgrade your stuff, you go through the pick up and deliver mechanisms. When I'm comparing it against Merchants and Marauders or Xia Legends of a Drift System, I liked Wasteland Express, and it made me get back. I enjoyed this game enough that I was like, I'm getting back Xia Legends of a Drift System. But I'm not keeping Wasteland Express. It was a little too cut and dry and a little too scripted in the procedural aspect of what you're doing, and a little bit too much luck in it. So there's a little bit too much luck as far as how other players can drive the win based on just the missions they get or the cards they draw, or sometimes just based on what they find, roll, or whatever. So I enjoyed it. I like it. I do recommend it, especially if you like pick up and deliver, and especially if you like post-apocalyptic settings, because the combination of everything going on here, the miniatures, the box art, the game trays, the general game itself, there's enough solid stuff here. Like, if I were rating this one, I think it'd be a 4. I think it would be a 4. I'm trying to think about a 3 point. Like, I'm thinking whether it'd be a 3.5, but it wouldn't. Like, when I think about it, when I think of my numbers, part of the process usually is I think higher and lower, and I think where it fits the most. And if I'm trying to give this a 3.5, instinctively, my body's telling me, not my body, my mind's telling me instinctively that it should be higher. So I think I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. But Xia was better than a 4 out of 5. And for me, for pick up and deliver as a mechanic, I don't typically love pick up and deliver as a mechanic. There's a handful of exceptions to that, and if I were ranking those exceptions right now, it would be Xia, Merchants, and then Wasteland Express. That would be the order that I'd rank those 3. I don't think there are any other pick up and deliver games that I'm thinking about that would rank in that setting. So yeah, that is Wasteland Express Delivery Service. And that is basically the games leaving my collection for November. We finally have progress. Finally have things leaving the collection, to the point that I didn't even run around my collection desperately searching for things to get rid of. Usually I do that. That's usually part of the process of me thinking, can I get rid of you? Can I? And I specifically didn't this month because I'm playing games with myself right now. And I realize if this month I have like 14, 15 games, next month I don't know what I'll have, so I'm going to save my running around and purging for next month. I already have my eyes on 2 or 3. We'll see what happens. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this monthly purge video of what's going, what's staying. Nothing's staying. This isn't a. If you want other videos, I know Quackle does Shelf or Sell, where he talks about games. They talk about games they're keeping or leaving, and Board Game Ramblings. They've been doing they've been doing Keep or Cull. Board Game Ramblings has been doing Keep or Cull for like a long time now. Fantastic series. I don't watch them all. I watch most of them. I like the process of people deciding what they keep or not. It's a fascinating thing of deciding. Rating a game, reviewing a game is a little more clinical. It's a little more abstracted. But the personal decision as what stays and what goes, I find almost more of an impact, more of a factor. because it tends to encompass other things. It encompasses the aspect of what else do I have in my collection. It encompasses this game is great, but practically speaking, it's not being played. It encompasses a lot of those types of things. Or even things like I'll get rid of games sometimes that I really, really liked, but my wife didn't like it, my game group didn't like it, or they didn't like it enough, and now it's not being played. And so I find that to be more interesting, although it has to be tempered with the fact that more often than not, the people doing these videos are content creators, which means they have more rotation, more access to stuff, so factor that in when you read into it. But overall, that's just a longer tangent. That's like, 3 minutes after I said, I'm Alex Radcliffe, blah, blah, blah. So I'll finish it off again. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good one.